Maturation is not inevitable. We all grow older, but we don't all grow up. We can get arrested. We can get stuck. There are a lot of adolescents who don't actually make it. It was thought that adolescence was a stage in its own right. And then soon, there was a realization that you could only make sense of it in terms of being a bridge between two stages, childhood and adulthood. And you had to see adolescence in the context of where it was headed. And you have to see an adolescent in the context of where they're headed and in the context of where they've come from. One minute you think you've got a glimpse of the adult they're becoming, and the next minute the transition goes back, sometimes wildly. So no wonder it's a time of turbulence and confusion. Success in childhood depends upon how good the attachments are to the adults in one's life. Success in adulthood depends upon the degree of integration in society. It's a completely different measure. Suddenly at pubescence, nature has to throw everything at this young person to equip them for the rest of their life, ready or not, whether their culture accepts it or not. So lo and behold, this young 12-year-old becomes ready to procreate. Is he ready to have children? Goodness, no. And this is true for every area. There's an explosion in awareness. Is the child ready for this? Most are not. The ultimate is to be able to stand on one's own 2 feet, to be able to think for oneself, to be able to make one's own decisions, to have one's own boundaries, to be viable as a separate being. This is about equipping that young person to become a fully functioning adult. And if an adolescent is not ready, there are going to be a lot more difficulties and problems. It's difficult enough when you're ready. And so developmental readiness plays a huge part in this. The equipping involves significant changes, an explosion in awareness, an attachment void, a hole opens up. And it becomes the pivotal piece, the critical issue of adolescence, of what fills that void. A large function of culture has been to offer the substitutes for parents to the child at the time of adolescence. Our culture is failing dreadfully in that regard. A change in the quest for autonomy. The adolescent all of a sudden has a huge appetite for autonomy, do it myself, be one's own person. Especially if a child is not ready, it can lead to all kinds of troubling behavior. And finally, the adolescent becomes a sexual being. These changes that take place create rites of passage, certain challenges that the adolescent must face in crossing the bridge from childhood to adulthood. In traditional cultures, many of them would be celebrated, would be acknowledged. We have none of these in our North American society, and because of that, our culture no longer carries with it the wisdom. It no longer is able to coincide with developmental design. The adolescent can embrace his or her developmental destiny or resist. And many resist. We don't have a culture that has this wisdom. So we can't interpret these experiences to the adolescent in a way that encourages them. It is a tremendous time of challenge for the adults involved. Sometimes the difficulties are a result of our own ignorance of what is really going on with the adolescent. Or because we are taking things personally, we begin to think it has to do with us and not the adolescents. How do you get them to fit into our agendas? Our challenge is to work with a developmental design. What is going on, what is meant to happen, our job is to help them cross that bridge from childhood to adulthood.